This is The Good Government Show.
We need to connect up better the work that the federal government is doing to the American people and show them the results that they can get from that. This is all called our Democracy Works 250 project, and it's about making the federal government work better for all Americans for the next 250 years, because why not? Federal workers care deeply about the trust that the American people put in them. Nobody knows about this because there were no problems. They understand that they have a special obligation to taxpayers.
Public service workers are facing challenges not seen in almost 150 years. On this episode, we hear from a legal nonprofit organization called Democracy Forward. They tell us how they're protecting government workers and ensuring we all get good government, the government we all want. Welcome to The Good Government Show. I'm Dave Martin. First, right now, wherever you are, subscribe to our show. Now follow us on your favorite social media sites. We're everywhere. Now that you've subscribed, like us and share us. Okay, that's done. Thanks. Okay, I met Rob Shriver at the recent National Academy of Public Administration's annual conference in Washington. He's a fellow there, but he's also managing director of Civil Service Strong at Democracy Forward and oversees their good government initiatives. You're going to hear all about them. And they certainly fit in with the Good Government Show theme we've got going on here. And one theme we keep hearing here on The Voice of Public Service is the dedication to their mission that government workers have on the local, state, and on the national level. If you listen to previous shows, and I hope you have, you've heard our guests explain that they view government service as their mission. Well, Rob Shriver is making sure those folks can complete their mission. There are over 2 million federal government workers. In the past year, over 300,000 of those have left the government. They've been let go or they chose to leave. As Rob Shriver will explain, this can and has had a devastating effect on government, their ability to continue services, and it's drained the government of some real institutional knowledge. He and his colleagues at Democracy Forward are working to keep that knowledge and to support government workers. He's working on many fronts. Wait till you hear. So coming up, my conversation with Rob Shriver of Democracy Forward. We have a new partner here on The Good Government Show, HelloNation. This is a new digital magazine that showcases the best of cities across the nation. We'd all prefer if good news traveled faster. At HelloNation, positive stories don't just get told, they get amplified. HelloNation helps businesses, leaders, and communities share positive stories that matter, building trust, credibility, and meaningful connection. Through professionally produced podcasts, digital features, and targeted distribution, HelloNation positions you as the answer regular folks are looking for, while expanding and scaling your digital footprint across the platforms that people trust. Good news deserves momentum. Your city or your business can help spread the word of good news across the nation. At HelloNation, they don't just have advertisers, they have advertisers. Editorial content from trusted community leaders and cities that are helping spread the good news. Let HelloNation lift you up and lead the conversation. Visit HelloNation.com to learn more. Once you wrap up this episode of The Good Government Show, give a listen to our friends over at Good News for Lefties. This daily podcast highlights news stories that show there's more good news out there. Other people in government are really trying to do the right thing. That's Good News for Lefties. Listen where you're listening now. Welcome to The Good Government Show. I'm very happy to have with me Rob Shriver. He is an attorney with an organization called Democracy Forward. We met at the National Academy of Public Administration's annual conference where you are a new fellow. Congratulations to be a new fellow at Napa. The reason why I saw your name at the Napa conference, and you're with an organization called Democracy Forward. Right away, I was attracted to that here on The Good Government Show. We like people who are working towards a better democracy. Let's start with Democracy Forward. What's the organization and what's your mission?
Well, thanks so much for having me on the show, David. Democracy Forward is an organization. It's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. It exists to protect and advance the rule of law. So we have a whole lot of litigating attorneys. They have filed lawsuits in states against the federal government. As you can imagine, the organization has been very busy since Inauguration Day. I think we've brought in the neighborhood of 150 lawsuits against the Trump administration on matters where we think that they're violating the rule of law. But Democracy Forward is bigger than just a litigating organization. So I am fortunate enough to lead a program called Civil Service Strong. It was launched in December of 24. And Civil Service Strong is all about defending and supporting our federal workers, advancing a nonpartisan civil service, and looking to reimagine the federal workforce and reform the federal government in a way that it can better serve all American people. Because I think no matter what you think about the Trump administration, the government wasn't working perfectly for people even before the Trump administration. So we're empowering.
The government wasn't working perfectly. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Well, all right. Let's start with talking about Civil Service Strong. I think in some of the notes I read, 95% of the American people believe that civil servants should be hired and promoted based on merit. Is that an accurate reading? Yeah.
Yep. That's right. That's from I think multiple surveys that have been done over the years. Yes.
So what's the challenge right now that we're facing with civil servants either staying on the job or getting hired in the job?
So the challenge right now is that's the statistic you read is certainly the view of the American people. The current administration, sort of ran on a plan of that they were going to clean house with the civil service. They have a view about civil servants being part of some deep state, entity that's out to thwart the Trump administration agenda. And that's important to know, not necessarily for partisan purposes. People can believe whatever they want to believe, that that's a good idea or not a good idea. But that's what's defining the Trump administration's approach to the federal workforce. And so, they came in from day one. They brought DOGE on board, and they had announced major reorganizations to happen at agencies. They had offered folks the opportunity to surrender their federal government jobs in exchange for basically being on paid leave for 7-8 months. And then at the end of that time, they would be off the books. They had a policy of doing a mass termination of so-called probationary employees, people who don't have the same civil service rights as other federal workers because they hadn't been on the job for more than a year or two. And so all of that has led to about, according to the OPM director, 317,000 federal workers having left government service this year.
How many was that number?
317,000, which is, 14% of the entire federal workforce. And so that's a big change, right? That's a big impact on agencies, their missions and programs.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, the other side for a moment. We all have the same perception of government workers because we've all been in the DMV, and you see people on their phone or, talking about their break. So there is a perception that federal workers are not the most effective workers. Is there any truth to that argument?
So listen, I have worked over my 30-year career for and with federal workers. They are incredibly dedicated to the mission. They don't take the job because of the paycheck, because many of them could get paid more in other jobs. They take the job because they care about trying to improve their communities and help the government serve the American people better. I was so honored, as I was the former acting director of the Office of Personnel Management before I started at Democracy Forward. And in that role, I was honored to work with federal workers across the country and to really understand what they were doing on the job and the impact that they were having.
And what was your overall takeaway from working with those folks?
I find them to be incredible human beings that care very much about their small part of whatever agency mission they're working on. Like, they know more about the thing they're working on than anybody else in the world, and they feel that it's very important. Now, look, it was a workforce of over 2 million people. And when you have a workforce that's that large, you're going to have some people that engage in misconduct or that aren't performing well. And, I think there's a lot of people who think that the federal government systems aren't set up well to address that misconduct and address the poor performance. I happen to think that agencies, do a good job on working on those things, but that we sometimes make it harder on managers than we need to. And so all of that should be on the table, because really what we have to make sure that the American people do is have a trust in their government and believe that federal workers are looking out for them and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars.
You spent about 10 years in various levels, culminating in acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. Do you have a story? Do you have an anecdote? Do you have a person that you came across that were like, wow, this is what government service is all about?
So I think that there's so many stories. The one that I'll pick out right now is, so the President Biden wanted to increase the minimum wage for workers around the country to $15 an hour. And he wasn't able to get that through Congress. And so we looked at whether we could get a $15 an hour minimum wage for the federal workforce as sort of, leading by example.
Sure.
And, without legislation, it was complicated to figure out how to do that. And, I knew enough about this federal personnel policy stuff to be dangerous. And so I went to the pay and leave team at OPM and I said, why don't we do it this way? I had an idea. And the team was not crazy about my idea. They thought that it would set really bad precedent, but they said, give us a week. And they went away for a week and they came back with multiple options for how we could accomplish this goal. And, I worked with the White House.
Were they better ideas than yours?
They were better ideas than mine because they're the experts. Okay. Yes, they were better ideas than mine. And what they understood, though, was that I had this policy goal, and it was a policy goal that, the president wanted us to implement. And so they went back and figured out the best way to do it and gave me the pros and cons, and we got it done.
All right. So that's a win. There's something I saw here in a press release or something. You said, when we go to the grocery store, we don't want to worry that the people who are inspecting the meat were hired by who they voted for. Explain that.
So our civil service, going back to 1883 and the Pendleton Act, signed into law by Chester A. Arthur, has been
my favorite president. We'll get to that in a minute.
So we have this long tradition in this country of a merit-based system. And that's not by accident. Prior to that, we had a spoil system where people were hired for government jobs based on political loyalty and patronage. And it was corrupt and ineffective, and the American people suffered under it. So we moved away from that in 1883 and have been living in this merit-based system ever since. And so what that means is that except for a small number of political appointees, and I mentioned there's 2.2 million civil servants, there's only 4,000 of whom are political appointees. So for the vast majority of federal workers, they are hired based on their knowledge, their skills, their abilities, based on their merit and what's needed for the job. And they do all kinds.
Has that worked since my favorite president, Chester Arthur, signed this into law? Because at that time, civil service reform was probably the biggest issue in the nation. And that led a path to, where we are today. Has it worked effectively since then? Have there been changes and alterations that have made it even better?
It has worked. It has worked effectively since then. Our civil service is the crown jewel among countries around the world, among democracies around the world. I'm not going to tell you that the federal hiring process is smooth and simple. It's challenging, and we need to work on that. But the outcomes that we see is our food is inspected by people who understand what they need to do to inspect the poultry industries and everything. They know what they're doing. They're experts in their fields. People that are evaluating small business loan applications are evaluating those based on their merits and not on whether the person contributed to their preferred political candidate. Decisions about where the federal government's resources to fight wildland fires, those decisions are made based on weather and science and the risk to property and human life. Those decisions aren't made based on how a particular state or county or neighborhood voted in the last election. Like, these are really critical services that the American people depend on, and they have been able to rely for 140 plus years on the fact that the people that are hired to do those jobs are hired based on their merit, and they're evaluated based on how well they do those jobs and not what they think about in their own personal lives with respect to politics. That's critical to our democracy, David.
You have filed a lawsuit, and one of the issues that you're working on is that people, when they are hired, I think I read somewhere 1,700 job applications recently, people have had to explain what it is they like about the Trump administration and, why they align with their thinking. Don't you want people who work in civil service to be, supporting what's going on in government?
People who work in the civil service need to work as hard as they can for whoever the political leader is to advance that political leader's policy agenda consistent with the law. Okay, full stop. That's the job of civil servants. And my experience having worked with civil servants, both in government and when I've been out of government, that is the thing that binds them together. That is what they do. No matter who is in charge, they work to try to give that person the best information, the benefit of their experience, and try to help those political leaders make the very best decisions that they can. Now, think about this, though, David. So 85% of federal workers work outside of the DMV area. They work all around the country.
Outside of Washington.
Outside of Washington, D.C. Right. You're asking folks who maybe are applying to be a benefits analyst at a Social Security office in Ames, Iowa, to understand the Trump administration's executive orders coming out of Washington, D.C. that are very HR focused. It just is not relevant to the job that they're doing. For most federal workers, they just want to come in. They want to do the best they can at their job. They want to take their guidance from their supervisors and their managers and do well for the American people. And the relevance of Trump's executive orders to most federal workers, it just doesn't affect them day to day.
So, for an example, if you're living in Dubuque, Iowa, and you have a job with the federal government keeping the Mississippi River clean, your mission is keeping the Mississippi River clean. Your focus is what are the rules, what are the laws, what do I see coming down the river that will make sure that the water in the Mississippi is clean. That's your first, second, and third priority. Not, do we agree with a Washington decision? Right?
Absolutely. Now, of course, the president can set the priorities for those workers and say, here are the things I want you to focus on, or you are doing the work this way, we want you to do it a different way, or here's some stakeholder organizations that we want you to talk to that are going to have some, that's all within the realm of the president's authority. But yes, that person fundamentally has a job to do, and that's the job that they're focused on.
Are you concerned that we are going back to pre-spoils system, pre-Chet Arthur's civil service reform and going back to the spoils system, and a new president comes in and 5,000 people are fired and 5,000 new people come in? Is that a real concern for you?
I am incredibly concerned about it. And it's not 5,000, it's hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of career experts who are being shown the door in just this first year under the Trump administration. They are rigging the system so that they can hire people based on their partisan politics and their political loyalty rather than merit. They've created this is a really technical HR thing. It's called Schedule G. And basically it's just a different set of rules under which agencies can hire their workers. And it's going to, once it's implemented, it's going to allow for far more partisan consideration in the hiring process. They've put the thumb on the scale of hiring committees that hire the career senior executives that are sort of the highest level of career civil servants in government. In the past, those committees had to have more career than political staff, and they flipped that. So there are now more political appointees making decisions about the career senior executives. And these examples go on and on. They're rigging the hiring process to allow them the ability to bring people in who are loyal to them politically.
When you were at the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, it said one of the things that you were an advocate for was something called hire to retire. Can you explain that?
So The federal government needs to be thinking strategically about its workforce and making sure that, first of all, it has a workforce plan about what the needs are, what the priorities are of the agency, what the skills are that are needed to effectively carry out that mission. Needs to engage in recruiting so that it's pulling from a broad pool of talent who's interested in working for the federal government and has the skills that are needed. You need to then get them through the hiring process, the onboarding process, and then no matter how long they stay, we have a model that's somewhat dated, where the system was set up for folks to work for their entire career in the federal government. Some people continue to do that, but there's a lot of people that move in and out of government or come and do 2 years in government and gain some experience and then go out. We need to make sure that we're supporting and taking care of all of those workers, no matter how long they're in government.
Do you want people to stay in government for a long time? I mean, is that the goal when you bring someone into environmental protection or the Department of the Interior or Commerce? I mean, do you want folks to stick around for their whole career?
I don't think it needs to be the goal. I think it needs to be something that is available to folks. So I happen to think that, having longtime career feds is good for an agency, but also having people that come from different experiences and spend a few years in government and bring that different perspective is really valuable as well. And so what we were working towards when I was at OPM was, how can we have a system that supports all of that brings early career talent in, maybe fresh out of school, gives them a few years of experience, and they contribute and they learn from the senior folks who've been there. And then maybe they go on to something else. Maybe they decide to stay. How can we bring folks in the middle of their career who have been working in the private sector, working in state governments, working in nonprofits, that have those experiences to bring? How can we make sure that there's an ability to bring them into government? Maybe they want to stay until they retire. Maybe they want to stay 5 years and move on to the next challenge. And then in the meantime, the folks that are doing a great job and they do want to stay, how can we make sure that they continue to grow and feel like they are contributing at their very best?
Right, because there's a lot to be said for institutional knowledge and someone who's been around for a while and can say, oh, we had that problem 10 years ago. Here's how we did it. Here's how we looked at it. That's invaluable, right?
David, it's incredibly invaluable. And I don't know why any political leader at an agency would choose not to tap into that or would try to drive those people out en masse. It's a terrifying thought to me, given the complexity of the work that these agencies do.
We have talked to lots of people. I talked to a gentleman who was the chief scientist at NOAA. And, he was like, no, this is my mission. This is my passion. This is what I've wanted to do since I was in college and worked for a professor and had a summer job counting fish in Chesapeake Bay. This is where I want to be. And there's lots of those folks in government, right?
That's a common story. And that's what's been so heartbreaking for folks over the last year, because they have worked to get to the position that they were in. They've built their expertise up. They've done all the things that they were told to do that would put them in a position to get the kind of job that they dreamed about. And then they were discarded, and often discarded in a very cruel way.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work at Democracy Forward. And then I want to ask, what else we can do to make sure this all goes well. Democracy Forward, you have, it says, uncovered secret deals with El Salvador to people who disappear. You blocked ICE raids in churches in Chicago. You've launched the You Are Not Alone project, which is a response to people who may have been fired or let go under the current administration. You support educating for students, where students are getting actual, education, not necessarily indoctrination. These are all projects that you've worked on Democracy Forward. Have I missed any of the big ones?
We have brought lawsuits to challenge the illegal reorganization of the federal government that the Trump administration is carrying out. Things like the dismantling of the Department of Education, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that, by the way, has saved taxpayers $21 billion, the elimination of USAID. All of these things have been done without congressional authority, and we have lawsuits that are challenging them. We brought a lawsuit when the administration attempted to shut off food aid through the SNAP program during the government shutdown. We brought litigation that led to a court order requiring the administration to tap into the SNAP reserves to keep people from going hungry just because they were pawns in a political showdown over the government budget. The number of lawsuits that we brought on behalf of civil servants is numerous. The Trump administration attempted to carry out reductions in force during the government shutdown, something that's never been done before by any administration, and we succeeded in getting those blocked. We are fighting the National Guard deployment in cities across the country. Basically, again, when you're an organization that's committed to upholding the rule of law, there are a lot of different places that this administration is giving us the opportunity to intervene through the courts.
Is there anything we can do, the people? I mean, you're fighting the good fight. Is there anything individuals can do?
So it's really the people that are going to get us out of this. And I think the most important thing for people to do is to number one, help to tell the story. I think
we're trying. We're trying here at the Good Government Show.
That's right, and I'm gonna talk about it from my good government background and my OPM background. I think the American people. I don't think we've done a good job overall. You excluded, David, of course, of letting the American people know how important the work is of our federal employees. I think there's a bit of a disconnect when things are going well, that the federal workers are just in the background making that happen. And so people don't really understand how significant and how helpful the federal government is in their day-to-day lives, whether it's, the food on the shelves being safe, as we've talked about before, whether it's, air traffic control, whether it's clean water, on and on and on about the things that federal workers do. I think what we can all do is start to translate that for the American people so that they are understanding when these things start to fall apart, because I am highly concerned that the dismantling of these agencies and the loss of 317,000 experienced career civil servants, that there are systems that are going to break down and that people aren't going to get the benefits checks that they need. Or there are going to be new health and safety hazards. We're going to lose ground in our fight against infectious diseases because those operations, those research projects have been shuttered. I think people need to understand the connection between the dismantling of the federal government and those outcomes, and need to come together to demand change in a new way. We need to be all rallying behind the fact that the American people deserve a federal government that works better for everybody. And again, that's not just going back a year. That's going back, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We need to connect up better the work that the federal government is doing to the American people and show them the results that they can get from that.
And I can't believe I left this till this point. What is the Good Government Initiative that you oversee?
So the Good Government Initiatives that I oversee, we are planning for a reimagined government that includes multiple prongs. One is we're taking a look at civil service policy and how we hire people, how we fire people, the pay system, broader performance management, benefits. We're taking a fresh look at all of that and looking to modernize it for an AI-enabled workforce that the federal government needs to have. Two, we're looking at the way that teams have been designed across agencies over the years. So human resource teams, tech talent teams, the budget teams. I think that we have some examples of those teams working really well in agencies and other examples of them not working so well. And so if we're going to reimagine government and look at a fresh chance to make big change here, we need to take a look at those teams and design them in the way that's going to work best. And then we need to identify the skills that people need to successfully deliver on those teams, and then find the people that have those skills so that there is a pipeline of talent that's ready to serve back in the federal government. This is all called our Democracy Works 250 project, and it's about making the federal government work better for all Americans for the next 250 years, because why not?
Well, that does sound like good government, and why not? Why? Because we need good government. All right, that was the easy part. Are you ready for the hard part?
I'm ready for the hard part.
The Good Government Show is sponsored by Our. That's OUR for our community. Get involved. We hear that all the time from government leaders. Our co-brands with your government's name and logo. Your staff and the people you serve are connected and part of your community. From any device, your members provide reliable data and meaningful feedback. Ask a question like, do we want more parkland or better homeless services? More engaged conversations come through the Our app. Visit Ourco, that's OURCO.com, and book a demonstration. After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts. This is our Good Government Show questionnaire. We always start with the hardest question first. Define good government.
A good government is where you have federal workers that are working efficiently to drive the agency's mission in a way that gives the best results to the American people.
That's simple.
That's simple. Everything should be aligned to that.
If people are frustrated with government, if they don't like what they see at the federal level or at the local level, what should they do?
There are places to speak out about that. I worked in district government for a while. There was an ombudsman in the DC, the District of Columbia, that their job was to take in those concerns from people, and then they worked with agencies to resolve those matters. It was very effective. We also had in federal government, every agency has staff that deals with constituent services with members of Congress. I'm sure that's a common way that people might know that, you can raise an issue with your member of Congress. They will then go to the agency and say, here's a problem that I have. And there were teams that were working on those and resolving those. Now, the Trump administration has decimated a lot of those teams. So we'll see how effective those constituent services remain. Many agencies have customer service complaint lines. Again, that was something that we took seriously at OPM and our inspector general took seriously. I'm not sure that those lines are staffed as well as they were before, and the Trump administration fired a lot of inspectors general. So I guess what I'm saying, David, is there were a lot of structures that were in place for folks. I'm not sure how potent they are under this administration now.
But if you can find your local ombudsman, you have a good chance to get to get your complaint heard. So 30 years as a lawyer, you started off working for, it looks like a government union, a long run at Office of Personnel Management. What drew you to public service? What made you go into government and stay there?
So my parents were both public school teachers from the beginning of their careers to the end of their careers. And I remember I had an experience as a child where it was before my mom started working as a teacher, and my dad and the teachers had gone on strike, and it was a lengthy strike, and so we got food assistance at the time. And I remember my mom saying to me, I was in elementary school and I was getting a free lunch, and she worried if I was embarrassed about doing that. And I was 8 or 9 years old, and I didn't have any idea why I should be embarrassed.
Right.
But as I grew up and learned more about social services and supports, I understood why she asked that question. And to me, it was just, nobody should ever feel embarrassed when they need some help. My dad there's nothing he could do about it. And we needed some help. And the government stepped in. And so I, coming from that background of service from my parents as public school teachers, and then being shaped by that experience. And I grew up in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, which is, it was steel country back in the...
No, it's the home
50s,
of Martin guitars.
Home of Martin guitars, the home of Mario Andretti. Good for you. There was cement mills and steel mills. Bethlehem Steel was there. And in the 70s, and I was growing up, the steel industry was on hard times. And, a lot of my friends, their dads in the neighborhood, because it was mainly their dads that were working at Bethlehem Steel. It was their unions that helped them preserve their middle class lifestyle. And so I was attracted to that too. I was attracted to, unions that were trying to help people,
Okay.
make a living. And so coming to public service and, starting first with working with the union, as you mentioned, and then getting to go into government and work on these policies to try to help people, try to help federal workers, middle class folks trying to get a leg up. That was very attractive to me. And I never looked back from it.
Who inspires you? Do you have a political hero other than Chet Arthur? I mean, do you have someone that you can point to?
Well, I had not been involved in politics before Barack Obama. And, no matter, I'll say it this way, no matter what people think of Obama as a president or candidate or whatever, I wish that everybody could feel that level of inspiration about somebody that I felt with Barack Obama. The night he lost the New Hampshire primary, I was so disappointed. And then he gave for the first time his "Yes, We Can" speech. And it just really inspired me. I signed up for his campaign. I volunteered. And then I really wanted to come into the administration because I believed in him. I believed in his message and his agenda. And so, like I said, I felt it was really special that I was able to have that feeling of inspiration from him. So he's got to be at the top of the list for me.
All right. Did you always see yourself getting into public service? Were you president of your high school class, or were you involved in student government, anything like that?
I was my high school class president. Yes, okay. I did student government at Virginia Tech, where I went to college. And then I went to law school, not necessarily because I wanted to be like a traditional attorney, but because I thought it could potentially open some leadership doors for me. And then, I wound up litigating cases at NTEU, and I really loved that and thought I would do that for my career. And then Barack Obama came along and it's like, okay, now's the time for me to try what I really went to law school to do.
So 10 years at Office of Personnel Management, all 30 years in government or government-related positions. What would you like people to know about government that they don't know?
I think what I'd like people to know is that federal workers care deeply about the trust that the American people put in them. They work hard every day. They put in extra hours. They're very dedicated to the mission. And when you hear these stray stories from time to time about a federal worker who's abusing the trust that the American people gave them, it hurts every other federal worker. Like, they understand that they have a special obligation to taxpayers. And so if you hear a stray story about somebody who's abusing that, somebody who was abusing telework, or somebody who was caught up in some kind of, pay to play scheme, it really hurts them personally because they're proud of what they do. And I think the American people should know that there are a lot of safeguards that are put in place that our system has built up since 1883 to combat waste, fraud, and abuse. There are, teams that exist in agencies specifically to look for that and to help agencies get rid of that and perform efficiently and effectively. And so it's a shame to me that there is a lower trust in government than I think is good for our democracy. And I think what's happening this year is making that problem even worse. But I'm hoping that what we can do is come out of this with a new, reimagined approach that will give us a chance to sort of rebuild the trust with the American people, because I think your federal workers are worthy of it.
Democracy Forward is an organization that is working on multiple fronts. What is the area you're most excited about?
I'm really most excited about our Democracy Works 250 project that we talked a little bit before, David. I think the challenges of emerging from this administration and this administration's approach with respect to the government and the federal workforce is an enormous challenge. And I think that we have the plan in place for tackling that. You need policy, you need people, you need engagement from the American public. A big prong of our project is to go and talk to the American people directly about what they want to see from their government, what good experiences they've had with government, what bad experiences they've had, so that the American people can see reflected in what we put together, what their priorities are. And I think often that step is skipped. I think too often people in Washington think that they know what the problems are and know what the solutions are, and they make a lot of assumptions. We're not going to do that. We're going to go and we're going to talk to the American people. We're going to talk to them directly. We're going to talk to organizations and communities around the country that are just beginning to understand how important a functioning federal government is to the things that they care about. And we're going to design this strategy in a new way that's going to be comprehensive so that whenever there is an administration from whatever party who cares about strengthening the democracy and rebuilding government capacity, we'll have the plan for them to do that.
You've been in the news. Where do you get your news from?
So I get my news from I will admit that like the young generation, I do get some of my news from social media. Like I was never on TikTok before until my teenage daughter wanted to go on TikTok. And so I had to go there to follow her and keep track of what she's doing.
Gotcha.
So I get some of my news from social media. But, I listen to NPR. I listen to podcasts. I have a trip into the city on a commute most days of the week. And I'll even listen to some of the cable news networks. I subscribe to the New York Times and read that too.
Okay. What do you do for fun?
Well, I'm a huge Philly sports fan. I like all Philadelphia sports teams. I put a lot of my energy into that.
All right.
We also, my family has a little place out in the mountains in the Shenandoah Valley here in Virginia. And I like that as a getaway. We go out there and hike, and there's a little ski resort, and there's a lake in the summer. And so it's sort of like around the year, four season kind of place. And so when we have free time, I love to do a little getaway out there and just be with nature.
So when they have the president's race at the Nationals games, which president do you root for?
Oh, I root for Teddy Roosevelt, the father of the Civil Service.
Teddy Roosevelt. Because, so although if you've never seen it, they have presidential heads that come out and race from third base down to home plate. So it's hilarious. Yes. Teddy Roosevelt.
And for many years, Teddy never won. He never won.
Really?
He finally won. Yes, he did not win for years.
Was there a reason why?
I don't know. I think it's anti-Teddy bias. We've suggested that.
What else could it be? So this is the Good Government Show. We always bring it back to good government. Tell me about a good government project you're working on now that you're excited about. You already mentioned 250. What else you got going on?
Well, can I tell you about one that we did at OPM that's really important?
I want to hear. We want to hear about good government anywhere it comes.
Right. So there was a big, people may remember, there was a big debate about the Postal Service and how to kind of save the Postal Service. And Congress enacted a postal reform law. And this is my wind up, because one of the things that it did is it took postal workers and their family members out of the Federal Employee Health Benefits Program. So Federal Employee Health Benefits Program, where feds get their health insurance, there's 8 million people in it. It's the largest group health insurance program in the world. But this law required us to take the 1.2 million postal workers and their family members out of the FEHB. And it gave us a really short timeline to do it in government terms. And so what we did was, instead of just sort of replicating the dated approach to the FEHB, we said, here's an opportunity for us to demonstrate how we could build a more modern IT platform that will provide a good customer experience for postal workers. It will help them shop for their plans and pick the plans that are best for them and save them some money, and then ultimately save the Postal Service money, which was the overall goal of the postal reform law. And so we took it up that way, and we used an agile development process, and it was a combination of government workers and IT experts from the private sector. We all came together, David, and we launched that project, and we launched it on time and on budget. We had a very successful first open season a year ago. It was the 2024 open season. Nobody knows about this because there were no problems. If there were problems with postal workers enrolling in health insurance coverage, you'd all know about it.
Okay.
There were no problems. People had a better experience. They saved money on balance. The postal workers saved money over the federal employees because of this. And the Postal Service itself saved millions of dollars because of the integration that we were able to do with Medicare. And so I'm really proud that OPM was able to deliver that. And I think it's the way to do it. It's now a model for reform for the FEHB overall.
Well, anything to help the U.S. Postal Service is certainly good government. So thanks for that. I wanted to ask you just quickly before you go, National Academy of Public Administration, you're a new fellow. You just started. Any projects you have coming up?
Yeah, I'm really proud to be part of NAPA. There's such amazing people who are NAPA fellows, people that have expertise, not only in the federal government, state and local government, academia, nonprofits, the private sector. It's a really great group of people. And NAPA, they do some really good work. They come together on knotty public administration issues and offer perspectives, analysis. I'm looking forward to being engaged in that. I know there's a public service advisory committee that NAPA runs that I'm looking forward to being a part of. And I'm sure that the work that we're doing with Democracy Forward and Civil Service Strong will provide for some natural partnership opportunities. There are important issues happening right now in public administration that require analysis, research, in-depth study, and NAPA is going to be great for doing that.
Rob Shriver, a NAPA fellow, a representative of Democracy Forward, where you are the managing director of Civil Service Strong and overseeing the Good Government Initiative. All good things we like to hear about on the Good Government Show. Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to meeting you at the next NAPA conference.
Thanks, David. It was great. Thank you.
Want to hear more about good government? Check out another show I host, Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. I host the show with Brad Kavanaugh, mayor of Dubuque, Iowa, and the immediate past president of the Iowa League of Cities. Together, we talk to leaders in Iowa cities. We talk about what works and what good government looks like in Iowa. Join us right here where you're listening now. That's Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. Some great insights from Rob Shriver of Democracy Forward. Here's something that stood out to me. We were talking about government workers. He said, and this is a quote, "They understand they have a special obligation to taxpayers." Well, that's good to hear, and that can only lead to good government. As the current administration is trying to roll back civil service to a time when what party you belong to mattered more than your ability to get the job or do your job in the federal government, it's good to know that Democracy Forward is making sure the civil service system continues to work effectively. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about Good Government and our show. Don't forget to review us and check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, for extras. Help us keep telling stories of good government in action everywhere. Join us again for another episode right here. I'm Dave Martin, and this is The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,